Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to the Muslim Career Guide with your host Aliyah Qayyum. Today I'm joined with Sister Shiba. Jazakallah so much for joining me today.
Walaikum salam, Alia. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, of course. So do you mind giving a brief introduction of who you are, what you do, and just all of that fun stuff?
Yes. So my name is Shiva. As you introduced me, I am the National Operations Manager for Nisa Homes. I work from the head office, which is in Mississauga. And as you know, Nisa Homes is a transition housing for Muslim women and children who are fleeing homelessness. Reason for homelessness could be anything from abuse to violence or financial reasons or poverty.
Right. So yeah, that's honestly like mashallah, that's so amazing that Nisa Homes is an amazing resource for just people who need that because unfortunately we do have that issue that we need to address. But before we do jump into the interview, I like to do like rapid fire quick questions with my guests. So I'll just give a random question and you can give your most present answer.
Okay.
So you can favorite book.
Favorite book, any Jane Austen book.
Favorite movie.
Favorite movie, I don't watch movies
Yeah.
usually. Or I would say any movie that I sit with my kids and see.
Yeah, those are, I guess, are good ones. But favorite recent purchase.
Recent purchase, I bought iPhone 12.
Nice. Texting or calling?
Texting.
Nice. And what's one thing that you can't live without?
I can't live without. I don't know. Can't live without what? Yeah, that's a very interesting question actually. Yeah. There are so many things that I can't live without, I guess. Yeah. Maybe I would say chai. I can't live without chai.
Yeah, that's a good one. And then the last one is, what's something that you don't understand?
I don't understand why immigrants are seen as second-hand citizens as compared to people who are born here. Just because we come with a foreign education, or just look at me, I have a foreign accent, right?
Right.
I was not born in this country. I was not educated in this country. I come with foreign credentials, yet I am not treated the same way as my Canadian-born peers.
Yeah, I mean, that's also something that I just would probably could never understand. Like, that makes no sense to me, but, I guess that is unfortunately what it is. But now we can jump straight into the interview questions. So my first question is, when and, like, why did you decide you want to apply for Nisa Homes and become the National Operations Manager?
So just to take you back to 2 years from today or 3 years from today, I went back, as I told you, I'm an immigrant here. I came to Canada with a degree in sciences and computer sciences. I couldn't get back into my field of education and expertise, even after trying hard for about 5 or 6 years, giving various examinations, giving so many interviews. But unfortunately, I couldn't enter. I couldn't just, there was nobody who gave me a break in the door, right? Mm-hmm. So eventually I started volunteering in the community. I have volunteered in hospital, in my local school, in my community as a community volunteer for almost 5 years. And I'm still volunteering as well. I run a tax clinic for low income seniors and new immigrants and refugees. I work on a salad bar program in a school as well. So all those experiences being a volunteer inspired me to look into a field where I can use this experience and gain actually paid work, right? Mm-hmm. Researched, then I talked to my peers around who are other volunteers, and then they suggested that I go back to school and do a 2-year diploma in social service worker program. I went back to Sheridan College, did the diploma, and if you see a luck, a coincidence, whatever, in my last month of my last semester, there was I saw a job posting from NZF, so National Zakat Foundation, for a caseworker. So I applied for that position. They did not hire me as a caseworker. Instead, I got hired as the city operations manager for the Mississauga location. Right. I have been the operations manager for that location for almost 2.5 years now. And very recently, there was a new job opportunity that came forward within the Homes itself for National Operations Manager. I applied for that. I was interviewed, and then I was hired into this new position. So I have very recently transitioned into this position. But this is what so far my journey into Nisa Homes has been for the past to 3 years now.
Wow, mashallah, that's so inspiring because you didn't start off as a job. Like you had so many like volunteer experiences, but like amazing volunteer experiences, mashallah. But what are the responsibilities of a national operations manager, and how does that compare with like a general operation manager of one location?
Nice. City operations manager are usually responsible for running and maintenance of the home in their locations, right? So each city operations manager has a staff which has themselves two caseworkers, a mental health counselor, a childcare worker, and then we have volunteers, and then we have placement students as well as a part of our team on a regular basis. So each operations manager, their jobs is to support the caseworkers in the casework process, support the clients with their needs, like anything from groceries to their rides to transportation to financial assistance, everything is approved by the city operations manager. Another big part of our jobs as operations manager is to do outreach in the community. So reaching out to other organizations, reaching out to other shelters, other housing operators like ourselves, or community organizations like Access Employment, who provides job employment services, or organizations like Central Settlement Organizations, just to let them know that here we are and these are what our services are and these what our clientele looks like. And if they have a client which might suit our services, that they're welcome to send us a referral. So this is what a day-to-day job of a city operations manager would look like. Apart from that, there are lots of emails, phone calls, and donations. Alhamdulillah, our community, mashallah, is very responsive to Nisa Home needs. So we have very regular flow of phone calls and requests of donations to like household appliances, mattresses, blankets. So many organizations do very regularly do drives for us. So fundraisings or food drives or personal hygiene drives. So the operations manager is responsible for maintaining all those connections, pickups, drop-offs, and everything around those responsibilities.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. It seems like you oversee a lot of like what's just going on along the shelters and stuff like that. So do you work in a team sometimes with people and work with other people? Like how does that work when you work with like other people?
Yes, city operations manager has to be a team player for sure. We work in teams, like if we have our own staff team which is on the location, right? And then we have a team of all Nisa Homes operations manager from different locations. That's another team. And then we have a bigger team, which is our whole Nisa Homes team from all locations, including caseworkers, counselors, and operations managers. So yeah, we are teams at various levels. We have all the operations manager, mashallah, have lots of collaboration skills, lots of teamwork skills, very strong communication skill, because we communicate almost with everyone around us. That's key to our work.
Yeah, and like mashallah, like there are 7 Nisa homes across all of Canada. And are you involved with all of those homes, or are you involved with a few of them? Like how does that work?
Yeah, so as an operations manager, yes, I'm involved with all of the homes.
Wow.
And just to update you, yes, we have 7 homes at the moment. Montreal Home soon opens, inshallah, July 1st.
Inshallah.
So by that time, so end of August, we'll be 8, inshallah. Yes, I'm involved with all homes. So I have meetings, like one-on-one meetings with all city operations manager on a very regular basis. I sit on their team meetings. I have meetings with Nisa Homes is not just about the locations and these managers, right? We are dealing with finance, we are dealing with IT, we are dealing with human resources, we are dealing with our own management team. Like I report to my supervisor as well, right? So we are so many stakeholders. So I have meetings with all of these people around. They are spread out in the whole week, but yeah, I have to have regular meetings with all of these people just to have all of us on the same page. What's going on? What's working? What's not working? In my job, this job actually is being presented because we are a fairly new organization. With any organization, yes, we are, alhamdulillah, we are trying. I think what I have learned so far with Nisa Homes is that we are actually making a huge impact in the community in terms of the services that we provide. But at the same time, very realistically thinking, we are not there where we have to actually be in terms of our services. So we are constantly critically thinking of how our processes are, how are we making it really effective and maximizing our impact. Just to let you know, I'm sure maybe you may or you may not know, we are completely community funded. So we don't have any grants from the government. The last year was the first year that we were able to get COVID related grants. So alhamdulillah, COVID was beneficial for us as an organization, that we qualified for some of the grants, which usually we don't. But otherwise, we are completely community funded. We are funded through zakat. We are funded through sadaqah money of the community members like you. And this, so so using zakat money is a responsibility. It's a huge responsibility. We can't be wasting money. So we have to find effective resources and maximize our service we have.
Yeah, and like speaking of COVID, how has COVID affected Nisa Homes and like your job specifically?
Um, COVID has affected in very different ways. I would say, if I speak about my clients, if you see, just imagine a client who is vulnerable, who is marginalized, who is discriminated because of their name, because of the color of the skin, because they are wearing a hijab, because they are women, right? And maybe they are single women, and maybe they're single women with kids. So these are all barriers that maybe all of us understand. But our clients come with additional barriers like language. They come with barriers like stigma of homelessness, stigma of domestic violence, stigma of the community not accepting single women, right? So all of these intersections add to the layers of where our women are coming from. And this now add another layer of COVID. So that's isolation, that's maybe an abusive spouse around you all the time. Maybe your kids are not able to go to school and you're in a small shared space with kids studying in the same space, right? So these are all types of barriers that we have in our clients. So we can only imagine, like, normally people like you and me, we are struggling with COVID and lockdowns for such a long and extended time. So for our clients, it's really, it's a period of struggle. It's a period of very hardship. And we are trying to support our clients as much as we can, like doing as much activities in the home. But again, we are restricted because of COVID, because we have to follow protocols in the home as well. Like 6 feet distancing has to be followed. There is lots of sanitization rules in the home. People are not able to go out as much as they can because, again, they have to stay in the home like you and me as well, right?
Right.
Those have been difficult for us and our clients because we have to keep on explaining them, we have to keep on educating them, and not every client would be at the space where they are ready to absorb this information based on the barriers or based on the state of mind where they are. And it's not fair that we rules, because then that's oppressive on them. So we have to be very mindful of being a trauma-informed approach, trying to explain them, trying to bring in people from outside who can explain this to us more effectively than us as staff members. So this is what we have done. We had to reduce the number of clients in the home because normally a singles room would have 4 people, but now we have only 2 because we can't have 4 people in the home because the distancing rules can't be followed. So yeah, there is reduced capacity of the home. There is increased sanitization rules. There is lockdown as for any resident, as for anybody else of us. We have to follow the same rules. And then public health has their own rules of are we following if there is a COVID outbreak in the home, and there was one potential outbreak in one of our homes. So we had to follow all the public health protocols, get all the tests, COVID tests done. There was a 14-day isolation for everyone, including staff and their families. So, and we are frontline staff, so we have to work in the homes. We can't be working from our home. So for us, remote casework was not an option. We have to be on our locations to be working from the home itself. So yeah, so these are some of the hardships or some of the struggles we have faced as frontline workers.
Yeah, I mean, that already sounds really hard because, like, I think a lot of us thought about all the small businesses that were affected by the shelters and like those just shelters being affected, especially by people who are in very troubling times. On top of that, with COVID, like, I couldn't imagine how hard that really is. So, I mean, mashallah to all of you, like, props to all of you. That's like amazing how you guys have been, going through this.
Add to just what I've said, mashallah, the community has been very supportive. People were reaching out like, how can we help you? If you recall the initial time of COVID, we all ran out of bathroom tissues and sanitizers and cleaners, cleaning supplies, right? We were running short and people were scrambling. Walmart had nothing, stores had nothing, everything was empty, right? Oh, mashallah, the community people called out to us and asked, what do we need in terms of hand soap, in terms of cleaning supplies, tissues, paper towels, and we got donations like, I mean, I just can't tell you how much, mashallah, we were blessed.
Actually,
People, people were going for their own shopping and they would shop for us. They would just call us, can I shop something? And I just buy because I'm seeing supplies here. Do you need the supplies? I can buy for you and then I can drop it off. So that's how mashallah, people were connected with our needs and our clients. And yeah, and I think that has been a source of strength for us, that there are people outside who are still thinking about Nisa Home clients in this difficult situation as well.
Yeah, wow, mashallah, that's truly amazing. But you also mentioned that there's a lot of departments along Nisa Homes. Like you guys really work to educate and to really help these just women and children, just like with financial assistance and things like that. How do you improve those, I guess, departments? How do you know what you need to improve, and then how do you go in to improve it?
Good questions. Yeah, as you know, Nisa Homes provides assistance with housing, with finances. We help clients apply for jobs, apply for education resources, anything that the client would need to make their lives better is we try to meet the clients wherever they are with their needs. Right? Sorry, what did you ask in terms of, okay, how are we trying to improve our services?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, so um, one of the things that we have in our processes is an of exit survey. So any client who is moving out of the home, we don't, like, it's not mandatory because not we do require consent. So if they consent to having that exit form filled, so we provide the forms to them, and that it is a tool for them to give us feedback on the services while they were living with us. So that's one way that we take feedback from our clients directly and try to improve the gaps in our services. Another way that we have recently done, like in the past 2 or 3 years, we have done annual surveys with all the clients who have moved out. So a client who would have moved on in 2019, we did a survey on them in 2020, just to find out the impact of our services on those clients after they had moved out. I can tell you, like, I don't remember all the data of the surveys, but I'm sure I think we had put out some of the data in our recent Ramadan campaign. I think almost 82% of our clients who have moved out have been able to sustain themselves after a year of moving out of Nisa Homes. So I think that tells a lot of the impact of our services. And we are we are very humbled by those numbers, alhamdulillah, that the services are working, and but at the same time, we are still exploring more tools which can help us measure our impacts in terms of how our services are helping our clients move ahead in life after they have moved out.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's amazing. Like surveys are probably one of a really great way to get people's input and feedback because they can go like more descriptive into it. So that really makes sense of how like impactful they can be. But
another thing that we are trying to do, just I think it will roll out in the next few months, is we are trying to reach out to our stakeholders in the community, like other organizations that we partner with in the community, to find out what is their feedback on our services, what is their impression of our services. That will give us an idea of what do other organizations think about us as a service. So inshallah.
Yeah, that's really smart. Yeah, that's really smart having like other companies and other stakeholders do that, because they could have a different viewpoint as a business point of view and find something. So that's very smart, mashallah.
Mashallah, you are more educated than me on that. I'm still learning this process.
Thank you so much. But my second last question is, what is the hardest part of your job?
Good question. For me, the hardest part, like I told you, I have recently transitioned into this position. So for me is, I think sitting through meetings all throughout the day has been a struggle so far. I'm still learning to exit one meeting and enter another meeting right off the bat. Like I just exited one meeting at 4 and joined you right at 4:04. So and the other one meeting would have been just feedback, and then this meeting would have been, now I'm giving some feedback to people around me. So that quick transition, that quick switch that happens with each meeting, I'm still learning that part. And another hard part is I am an introvert. So for me now, meetings are speaking all the time. So I think I am being challenged, like.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like that can be hard for an introvert, having to constantly talk to people all day.
Yes.
Yeah. And
So those
yeah,
are the two things that I'm really learning. Inshallah, it will
inshallah.
happen. Inshallah,
Yeah,
it will happen.
inshallah. That's great. And the last question is, if you could give any piece of advice to anyone that wants to be a national operations manager or even just an operations manager in general, what would that be?
Advice as in skills or passion,
It could be anything that you would like, anything that
anything.
you think is
Okay.
important.
I think to be like to say in one, I would say your answer, your question is multiple levels for me.
Right.
One, I am in a social services field, right? To
Mhm.
be in a social services field is about passion because this field doesn't give you much in terms of compensation. We usually, most of the people who are working in social service are working for nonprofits, most of them. They are not so highly paid as compared to the other sectors in the other service sectors, right? Like IT, computers, or
Mhm.
uh, government, whatever kind of jobs, right? So
Right.
that's number one. For us, passion is key to why we are working in this sector. If I talk about my own organization, why am I with Nessa Homes? I think my passion being an immigrant, having faced some of the, I wouldn't say not all barriers, but some of the barriers that the clients that come to Nessa Homes face has been, a link between myself and their struggles. So it helps me empathize where they are and helps me understand the needs of the clients at a very personal level. So that is another thing that drives my passion to work with my clients. Advice that I would give is if you are in social services, you would know that this is a high burnout field because you are always dealing with stories of trauma around you, and that takes a toll on your health. So, and I think now in the COVID era, I think self care is very important. So I would
Mhm.
say, do have a routine of self care. Like what I've seen is people go and buy something for self care, or people do think vacations are self care, or people
Yeah.
think going to exotic resorts on hotels, and all
Yeah.
those things are self-care. But what I have seen from my experiences is self-care should be something that can be practiced every day, a small period of a time, even 15, 20, 30 minutes of your day. If you can just, like for me, my self-care is just sitting with a cup of chai in the morning
Yeah.
after Fajr, and people around me. So there's no one around where my kids are usually sleeping after Fajr. So I just have my chai and I just sit by the window on the balcony and I just watch outside the sun rising or the birds flying, and that is self-care for me.
Yeah.
So for me, that has worked. That has become a part of my routine, and I would suggest that people should try those small things that help them
Yeah.
keep their sanity.
Yeah, and honestly, like that's great advice for anyone. We all need self-care, COVID times, non-COVID times, because people can burn themselves out quickly, especially with the social services job where you're getting a lot of stories that are hard stories sometimes to even hear and real life stories that people go through. So having that self-care is important for you to reset because I heard this too that you can't help people if you can't help yourself. And so
Yes,
that's very
exactly. Very true.
important. Yeah. And yeah, Jazakallah so much, Sister Shiba, for joining me today. Where can everyone find you, Nisa Homes? Where can everyone donate? Anything like that?
So you're welcome to visit our website, nisahomes.com. We are on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. So if you can follow us on all these social media, I think we are on Instagram, we are on Twitter, we are on Facebook. I'm missing one more. I think we're on LinkedIn as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, follow us on all the platforms.
Yeah.
We do regularly share our client, like not the actual client stories, but stories that have impacted us as staff members, stories of success of our clients. We regularly share on social media. We share what we do in the homes with our clients. The IDs are protected for sure, but somehow, just to give an idea of what we do with our clients in our homes. So do follow us on social media. You'll find lots of valuable information. And yes, for donations, we have a wish list, Amazon wish list on our website for each home. So each home managers put on their required items that they would need for their homes on the wish list. People can go on the website and donate directly, and it helps us that the items just directly get delivered to the home rather than we have to go for a pickup or the donors have to come for a drop.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And inshallah, we'll leave them in the links in the description down below, along with Sunnah Camp's links. And inshallah, we will see you all next Thursday. Assalamu alaikum.
Inshallah. Welcome.